You taste that? That's clean mountain water, son. I reached down and cupped a handful of water from the mountain stream, raising it to my mouth. It tasted chilled, almost sweet, with just a hint of earth, like taking a bite of snow. My dad reached down, filling up his water bottle. Yep, that's why you've got to take time to get off that old Game Boy of yours and enjoy the great outdoors. It's a Nintendo Switch, Dad. Yeah, well, back in my day, we ran around barefoot, climbed trees, and drank straight out from the hose, and now you can't even do that. Frickin' government. We can still do all those things, Dad. No one is keeping us from doing them. Yeah, well, not as good as when I was your age. Come on, let's keep following this trail down the river. This trail didn't seem very well traveled, just barely carved into the sprawling ferns and other plants by the wandering moose, bear, or fisherman, I thought. I was going into my sophomore year of high school, and my dad thought a trip up to Alaska was just the adventure I needed before getting back into the swing of school. So on a whim, he purchased us plane tickets up to Alaska, got us a rental adventure van, drove us off. He never really was one for planning. Deep down, I couldn't help but think this was just his way of firing back at my mom and her new boyfriend for taking me down to Mexico this last spring break. At least he was trying. Wait, hold up. Is it a bear? I thought, as I leaned out the side to look around. I had heard of bears and moose being plentiful up in Alaska, but despite driving through the state over the past few days, we had yet to see one. There's a tent up here, but it looks old. We cautiously moved towards the tent. Despite not showing any signs of animal abuse, the dirt, lichen, and pine needles on the outside made it seem like it had been there for a while. On the outside of the tent, scribbled in large uppercase letters, were the words, "They're inside." "They're inside?" I asked. Dad just stared for a moment, before moving towards the opening of the tent, but there was no one inside. Well, whatever was inside doesn't seem to be here now. Alaska can bring out the cooks from all over. You ever heard of Christopher McCandless? He died trying to live out here in the Alaskan woods. It's a brutal place. Maybe the rangers came and removed the bodies but forgot to take down the tent. Yeah, maybe, I thought. Luckily, the small trail we were on opened up into a larger, more established hiking trail as we continued down the river. See, I knew this was a shortcut. Your old man still got it, he said as he lightly punched me on the shoulder. I gave him a smile. This was a fun trip, all things considered. The ferns, trees, streams, and mountains certainly beat the rolling farm fields back in Iowa. But there was definitely a lot less arguing than previous family trips. It seemed like the classic she likes big cities and lots of people, he likes the outdoors with no people. It's a wonder how they even ended up together. Following the trail, we could make out what appeared to be a few people just off the side up ahead. As we got closer, we could make out the dark green vests and khaki shirts through the light fog. Alaskan park rangers. "How we doing, folks?" the one ranger asked, thumbs tucked into his utility belt as he approached us. "Not too bad. Beautiful day for a hike, despite the fog. Still beats being stuck back at home in Iowa." The ranger grinned as my dad continued. "I don't suppose you know about a tent just up that away, off the trail? It looks like it's been there quite a while." "No, can't say I do. We often stick to the main trails unless there's been something reported. There's been a slew of weird stories up in this neck of the woods lately, so we were called up to go check it out. I'll have to go see about that tent up there though. Maybe it's somehow connected." It was at that time that I looked beyond the other ranger, who was still staring off into the woods. That's when I noticed the large cow moose laying down on her side, just a short distance away. The ranger noticed my gaze past him. "Yep, that old girl's looking a little worse for wear if you ask me. Looks like she may have been the victim of a bear attack, but she's still hanging on. Pretty rare to see a bear take on a fully grown moose, even if it is a cow instead of a bull, but you do see it sometimes, especially if the animal's feeling a bit sickly. Makes them an easier target. Strange though that the bear isn't here to finish off the meal." "Ooh, hear that? A bear! That's an Alaskan adventure, eh?" my dad said as he leaned over at me. "You folks have bear spray?" the ranger asked, looking towards my dad. Typical, we didn't even think to bring any along, being from Iowa. "Not a problem," the ranger replied. "We've got some back up at the entrance of the park. They're a little pricey, but I can tell you from experience, they work. Why don't you folks head on back with us and we'll let nature do its course here." The rangers backed away from the moose, returning to the trail as we followed behind them, walking back towards the entrance of the park. We discussed Alaska, Iowa, and the different animals we could find around the park. It was pretty fun hearing about their crazy stories, and if I'm honest, it felt much safer in their company. We rounded a bend in the woods, heading uphill, when one of the rangers stopped in their tracks. "You smell that?" "Yeah," replied the other ranger. He took a few steps backwards towards us. "That smells like a bear, which means they are close. Could be right over this ridge." The other ranger kept staring ahead of us before he started stepping back towards us as well. "Let's see if we can head on back down the trail and take a different route back up towards the entrance. It's a little longer, but we don't want to tangle with the brown bear if we can avoid it." Dad and I agreed, as we all turned around, still keeping our eyes trained at the top of the forested hill. Walking back down towards where we were before, the moose had finally reached its end. "Well, that's nature for you. We've been gone for a little over an hour and something's already started eating this moose." We continued walking. The cow moose was lifeless and now had a large basketball-sized hole drenched with blood on its stomach. A trail of blood leading across the trail and towards the river. I stepped over the bloody trail with small chunks of what I could only imagine were intestines dotted amongst the blood. We continued walking for an hour before we started back up the trail towards the top of the hill once more. "Well, that's the good thing about summer in Alaska. No shortage of daylight, even if it is a bit foggy," one ranger said. I checked my phone, realizing it was past 8 o'clock in the evening, but still no reception or internet in these mountains. As we reached the top of the hill once more, one of the rangers stopped once again, putting his hands on his waist. Clearly aggravated, he turned towards the other ranger. "Now am I crazy? No, I don't think so. I think this bear is following us. Wouldn't be a problem if we weren't upwind." The rangers took their cans of bear spray from their belt and continued forward, slowly and carefully. "Now this bear knows we're here, but still, we're going to continue going forward with our bear spray and make sure they know we're here so we don't startle them." Dad and I shook our heads in understanding as we slowly crept forward. "Hey bear! Hey mama!" the rangers shouted as they continued walking. "Hey bear! Hey!" We neared the top of the hill, almost able to see up above, but then my arm hair stood up on end. Goosebumps raised as a shiver of pure terror ran through my spine. The bear was sprinting directly towards us. In person, it was so much larger than I could have imagined. Its rolls of fur moved towards us with frightening speed as the rangers split on different sides of the trail, opening fire with their bear spray. The bear reared back in shock and anger, turning towards one of the rangers and swiping at them with their paw. Hearing the pop and snap of the ranger's elbow as the paw slammed his forearm he was using to shield his body. The look of terror on that ranger's face, to see a grown man I had felt so safe with for the past few hours, now feeling completely helpless. The bear continued, biting into his vest and chest as blood splashed onto his neck and face. As a last resort, the second ranger pulled out his sidearm, a large, big-bore revolver, opening fire until there were only clicks. The bear took each impact, at first like a small sting, but recoiled more and more with each continued bullet that followed, leaning on its left legs until it finally toppled over, squirming with pain. We rushed to the ranger's aid, as he slowly elbow-crawled away from the bear with his one good arm, as the other ranger reloaded his revolver, approaching the downed bear. I think my arm is broken. Luckily, my vest took the brunt of his bite." Dad took out his water bottle, putting it to the ranger's lips. "Here, take some water, both of you." The ranger took a few gulps before gasping for a breath of air. Dad got up and approached the other ranger, who still had his eyes set on the downed bear. "We need to put this bear out of its misery," the ranger said, as he approached the bear once more. The bear's body shook once more before lying lifeless. The ranger took a big breath as a wave of relief washed over him. "Here, take a drink. You deserve it after that performance," my dad said, trying to lighten the mood. The ranger took a few big gulps before handing it back to my dad as he turned around to the other ranger. "Thank you. Good, clean mountain water. How are you doing, partner?" "Well, I'll make it. Think we'll need to take a trip to the hospital, though." he said as he nodded towards his broken arm. Hey, we can do that, the ranger smiled. You just survived a bear attack. You'll be a local legend. The ranger smiled in response, though still obviously in pain. Dad and the ranger took him under both of his arms, helping him off the ground. Finally on his feet, the injured ranger looked up sharply. You see something? The other ranger responded. Could have swore I saw that bear move. Guess the memory of this attack is still messing with me. He chuckled once more before wincing from the pain in his chest. But the bear did move. We watched as its stomach bounced this way and that, as if being contorted from the inside. Then finally, blood. Slow at first, but then as if there was something pushing and hitting from the inside, a splash of blood burst as something popped out, then another, and another. The hole getting larger and larger as dozens, if not hundreds of these worm-like creatures slumped out of its stomach, flipping and flopping down the hill towards the river. The ranger bent over, grabbing one of these creatures by the hand. It squirmed, opening and closing its mouth, trying to bite him as he looked it over. Oh, this here's a blackfish, but it's all white. I've never seen this before. It has pink eyes, as if it were albino. You ever heard of anything like this? Not in my life, the other ranger responded. I can't imagine how they would have gotten in its stomach. It would have had to eat the eggs somehow, or drank them? The moose? You don't think? I don't know, partner. There's definitely some strange things going on around here for sure. I think we'll need to call for backup. The other ranger nodded in agreement. We continued our walk up towards the entrance, as I thought to myself how no one will ever believe this story when I get back home, which is why I started writing it down in the notes of my phone. But I'll tell you one thing, now that we're out of the fog surrounding the river, I never noticed until now that my dad's water bottle on the side of his backpack shimmers in the light, almost like those water sphere videos you see online. I know we're both excited to get back in the van though. We may need to take a trip to the convenience store for some Pepto-Bismol. We've both been having some horrible stomach aches ever since we got back.